Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Solution Sunday. I am Lisa Warner,
Hello
and
and
I
welcome,
am here in my reverberation. There we go. I am here with my beautiful, amazing guest, Ryan Joseph Allen. And he is the author of My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God, right? Is that how it says?
Mhm.
Yep. All right. Got it perfect. So, and Ryan is the embodiment of love. Everything he is about. I have known Ryan for what, 6 months or more now, and probably more than that. And he is just the epitome of love on this planet. So welcome, Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for bringing us together and letting us spread some joy and love and authenticity with those in the world. And so I really appreciate that. That's one of my main purposes here, if not the main purpose, acted out in many different ways. But so I'm super excited to be with you and just to have a conversation and get people thinking and get people loving. So thank you.
Exactly. Love is the answer to all of our problems, isn't it? Like,
It is. And loving yourself tends to be the thing we miss oftentimes, right? Like we're so quick to give love to our, partner or our parent or child or our animals, or even a stranger, a homeless person. But then we're not willing to give that same love a lot of times to ourselves, or we're not open to the idea of giving that kind of love to ourselves, or we don't know how to give that love to ourselves. So, or we forget. We might know all those things, but then we forget on the day-to-day basis.
absolutely. The reason that, so we have Keith and Shannon and Brenda here with us this morning, all of our family.
Hi.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. So, yeah, so from my perspective, we are love, unconditional love. That is who and what we are. My personal experience when I was a little girl, many people have heard me say this, when I was very, very little, I would go to bed at night. And as I closed my eyes, I would just become part of the unified field. It was like floating in space, but the space was filled with unconditional love and light. And I knew that that's what is, like, now and forever, always has been, always will be, permanent. That space is who and what we are. As I was part of that space, my body wasn't part, I mean, my body was included, but as I was floating, like, I was just an attention point. And I knew that that's who and what we are, that we're not physical beings. And that's what the soul is, from my direct experience. That's where I speak from, because I can't speak from anybody else's experience, but that's my experience. So that's my reason why love is the answer to all questions, because when we're in that space of unconditional love, like, there's nothing that can harm us. And we would never harm anyone else intentionally. But when we come into these physical bodies on this planet, unconditional love is not the ruling force on this planet. It hasn't been for a really long time. But now is the time for the paradigm to flip. It's time for us to take our power back from the dark and bring the light, which is the unconditional love. And this is your story and my story, all of humanity, of how we fell into that darkness and then pulled ourselves back out and back into the light, using that love that we are. So share a little bit about your story, Ryan.
Yeah. So first of all, I wanted to say back to oneness, right? That's where you were going every night. You were back to oneness, back to source, back to the love, light, all those things mean the same to me. Back to God, to me, love is God and God is love. So that's the divine, that's the creator, that's spirit. all of those things. So it would I shouldn't say challenge you, but be different to go there every night and then come back here to this earth plane and be a little shocked. Like, why is it not like, where I go every night? Why is it so different? Why is it so challenging at times, or sad, or whatever? And that's kind of how I felt as a child, right? So I was really connected to spirit. Not when I went to sleep sometimes, but a lot of times it was just, when I was at church, or having a conversation with someone who was like spiritual or religious, I could feel that sense of God. And but from a young age, I knew I was different. I was different than all the men around me. So I had noticed that difference. All my brothers and friends and male role models, they liked video games and sports and all of these things, wrestling around and whatever. And though I did those things, they never felt natural to me. I was so much more comfortable doing like artwork and talking with people and really using my right brain and not always that like left brain piece. Or so anyway, I started noticing I was different, separate from those around me. And by the time I was a teenager, early teenager, realized I was in the LGBTQ plus community. Had thoughts of ending my own life at a very young age. Like 6 years old was the first time I thought about leaving this earth plane. And I think at that age, it wasn't a graphic experience of like visualizing that, but it was like this visualization at that age. If I left this earth plane, I would get to go back to this like oneness that you're speaking about. And so then I fell into this LGBTQ plus community by the time I was pretty young, 9 or 10. By the time I was like 12, 13, I was experimenting with drugs and alcohol and all these other self-destructive behaviors like cutting, all of these things that, self-mutilation, all of these things that, struggling teens go through. It was like, I was like the poster child for challenges that kids had gone through or could go through. It's like I went through all of them, at least for a short amount of time, some for much longer. So by the time that rolled around, I started really disconnecting to myself. Obviously, I had this self-loathing, right? The opposite of love, is, well, there's many people think the opposite of love is different things, but to me, it was fear. The opposite of love is fear. It's not necessarily hate. Hate's a symptom of fear. So I had this fear of myself. I had this fear that God didn't love me anymore because I was taught by extended family or society that God didn't love LGBTQ people. And though not everyone around me said that or thought that, I just still had that feeling in my heart. Or maybe it wasn't my heart, right? It was the fear that shrouded my heart. So I couldn't feel my heart. I couldn't feel that love. And from there, it just got perpetually worse and worse and worse. Drugs and alcohol were like the main staple of my life. And of course, this like self-destructive, self-manipulative space where I just couldn't find that love, right? Like I'd always felt so much love as a child. So I knew I was capable. I knew what it felt like. I would grasp for it and reach for it. And it would be so hard for me to reach. And I put so much fear around my life and into my head and into my heart. I placed that fear because I was afraid that I wasn't loved by the divine. I wasn't loved by people. I couldn't be myself, right? So the stories, I could go on forever, but essentially what happened at some point as my daughter was born, that's a whole story in itself. My daughter was born and you would think, oh, Ryan's going to do good. He's going to get on the wagon or well, maybe for a little bit. But a couple months after she was born, I separated from her mother, started using hard drugs every single day, really spiraled out of control. And I always say like, people hit rock bottom, but I hit like rock bottom and then dug myself 10 feet into the bedrock because I just didn't, I was way lower than I could have ever imagined. And from that point, I had this epiphany one day when I had just snorted my last line of Opana, which is like a pretty strong pain medicine, and an opioid. And I had this vision of, I was listening to this song, and I had this vision of my daughter as an adult coming to me, singing me this song about how her life was really painful and full of sorrow and fear, and not much love and not much belief in herself. And that part of that reason was because I wasn't there for her, because I was either dead or in prison or homeless or not in her life, on the side of the road, because that's where my life was going. Little by little, right? Or sometimes big leap by big leap, it was getting there. So I made this agreement to myself. And at that time, I didn't, I'd really disconnected so much from spirit and God, I would have never known, but I just made the commitment to her and myself. It wasn't really much higher power there involved. And didn't touch hard drugs after that ever again. But I still was on this path of like drinking and smoking and all the time. And about a month later, I was sitting there with my drug dealer of all people, who I had a conversation with about her divine, about God. Now, she identified as Christian, though a little bit more like New Age Christian, a little less traditional Christian. But it was explaining to me about her faith journey, and something in my heart like awakened. It was like a little fire that never went out, right? That was always there, but shrouded in this hate, shrouded in this fear. And it it opened, and I could feel it. And I was like, whoa, like I used to feel that way about God. Like, what happened to me? And I started kind of doing like a life review, right? And by the end of our conversation, I was like, oh, I really have faith now. And it was interesting because we were talking about faith, and then there was this one plaque I'd left out from Christmas. So this was happening in March, the March area. And I'd left this one plaque out, it's like faith, believe in love or something, or faith, believe in hope. And this 3 placard set. And I left out the placard that said faith on my microwave. And we were sitting in my kitchen at the kitchen. And I looked up and I saw faith right when I had felt like I had that feeling of like, I believe, or, and then it was just one of those moments where like, you knew. And so I went to the bathroom, fell on my knees, and asked God, the divine, to save my life, that I needed to be saved and helped and guided. And funny enough, the next day I was taking my friend, my drug dealer, who was my friend, who also had a full-time 40-hour-week job, still sold drugs to supplement income, which is a whole story in itself as well. But I was taking her to work, and we were talking about faith. And the one license plate in front of us that could say faith in the state of Kentucky was the license plate that was in front of me as I pulled out from dropping her off at work, right? There was 1.5 million cars roughly in the state at the time that had license plates registered. So that was 1 in 1.5 million chances of that day. And that's when God really started showing me signs and really started allowing me and opening up not just my heart, but my eyes and my senses. And that's been about 10 years ago now. I'm going on 10 years of those experiences. In a couple of months will be my 10-year hard sobriety date from hard drugs. And then about a year after that, because I still dabbled for a while after, and just some like drinking and drugs, will be like my 9 years sober. And there's a whole story within that, right? But I will at least give you a chance to like chime in or ask questions, because it's a long story.
I love that. No matter how much darkness gets covered over us, there's always still that spark inside. That light never goes out. And once that is reignited, that flame can come alive, and we can remember who we are. We can start remembering the love that we are. And I feel, there are so many more levels and layers of who we are, higher selves and other aspects. And, once we find, the fallen aspect, the part that has gotten sucked down into the darkness, is still just as much loved as every other part of us. But it's up to that part that has fallen into the darkness to make the choice to get out of that. And whether that is like surrendering, like, help me, like, I'm ready, like, come on, get me, and then, all the awarenesses just start and the synchronicities start. But it's like, we have to make that choice. We have to get to that rock bottom, and then we start back up the ladder, sort of
And you
like
start
that
having those
yoga.
awakening experiences, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes you on the ladder, you're able to just like reach up and you go up like 5 rungs. And other times you're like a half a rung. You can't even make it to a full rung yet. But those awakening experiences all kind of they elevate, lift you back to your original state, that oneness that we were talking about at the very beginning of our chat. It really brings you back to that. And that's what happened in my story is a few months after that. So that's happened in March, the situation with my drug dealer. By the beginning of June, so what is that, 2.5 months, whatever, 3 months, I had my big shift, my big awakening. So I had these little ones that really helped me, but I had this big shift, and it was and God spoke to me, and said, no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes, which I didn't really listen to, like I said, for a whole other year after that. But I worked on it really hard and really intentionally. And then he said, he gave me my mission. He said, your mission on earth, your purpose on earth is to help people love and accept themselves. And I thought, well, that's a beautiful mission. So then, from there, it's so funny, right? Because you're like, how can you really teach someone or show someone or give them the toolkit on how to love and accept themselves until you really love and accept yourself? So that was like the next, until now, right? Like this, and this is a forever journey, is how to love and accept myself on even like a deeper level. And so I learned some of the basics, and I learned some spiritual principles around like meditation. I was guided to the school of metaphysics, which teaches different things from world religions to meditation, visualization, mindfulness practices, concentration, some of the basics. But I did this concentration exercise. I was with that school for about a year, a little bit longer than a year. And one of the exercises every day is to stare into a candle flame. And every time you have a thought other than the flame, you make a mark on the paper. And so from when the time I started that, I would have like 80 marks in 10 minutes. And by the end, I would have like 18, 20. So after a year, I was able to concentrate, 4 times more effectively than I was before. So all of these little things, even though that was more of like a basic thing that, like a building block thing, it was really important. So I started having all of these things, and each one kind of like brought me higher up on this ladder of reaching my true self. And was turned to something called oneness, which is like a hands-on healing out of India. So I did that, and I'm like a oneness practitioner. I learned things around Kundalini Healing, which is essentially this energy at the base of your spine, every person, that you can kind of invoke and bring to the surface, and then do like physical or other types of healing on yourself or other people or the world or the universe, multiverse. So, I was brought to all these different spiritual paths, modalities, right? These healing modalities, these modalities for learning how to balance and create more love, getting back to that love. So then I could later learn little tools, right? I keep learning all these tools. And over time, I learned more and more on how to reach, to help other people. I needed to know those myself, right? I couldn't just read a book and then say, oh, you should do these things this book says. It was like, I had to like live it, right? For me to really help people understand what that's like to love and accept yourself, which is a whole process. And, that could be like a whole series on how to do that. But that's essentially what happened in my journey. And then, there were other things like from the 3D aspects, like I almost got kicked out of college, but somehow miracles, right? Miracles start to happen when you start to really be aligned with who you are. And so I didn't get kicked out of college. I actually went back and got a master's degree. I'm working on a doctorate now and in the dissertation phase. I was able to be the dad to my daughter that I never really had or felt growing up. And so that's been really beautiful, and been able to heal relationships, been able to learn how to have healthy relationships, kind of these more like 3D, 4D things, but are still really important. Like as humans, like it's important that we take care of ourselves and those around us. And we might learn how to love and accept ourselves, but that doesn't mean we don't have other work to do in other areas. So, so it's been such a beautiful journey through all of that. And I'm kind of like just paraphrasing, because I don't know exactly what you want to touch on and what you want to talk about. So I will be complete in now and let you kind of guide where we're going next.
So Keith says, I can't imagine this world without you, Ryan. I'm so happy you chose life. You make a difference in my life. And Jackie Catherine, good morning. She says, love never gives up, never loses faith, and is always hopeful, from Corinthians. And she also says, there are also falling moments, challenges, crises. We need constant awareness because the shadowed parts and places can easily resurrect. And then she says, I just bought a book, Breathe Like a Bear, to teach children meditation and relaxation. It's an imaginary candle breathing exercise. Beautiful. We
That's
need
so
these
cool.
things to teach children how to stay connected. And I love the candle analogy, because we are all the flame. We are all that light on the candlestick. We are all the flame. But then when we fall into the darkness, we're told that we're not supposed to be who we are. We can't be who we are, that it's horrible to be who you are. That flame dims and our light stops shining. And then we get distorted into all these other sizes and shapes that don't fit us, because we're trying to fit into everybody else's expectation of us. So, you know, as humanity, we have been cloaked in this veil of darkness for thousands upon thousands of years, forgetting our light, forgetting the love. That love and light, it's who and what we are. And that love and that light is our creator abilities. We are creator beings. But when our light has dimmed, we don't have enough fuel to create. Like, and we don't have, we can't shine the light. You know, it's not that we have to create. Everything is, from my perspective, everything is already created. But we have to be able to see the thing that we want to create. So if we don't have enough light shining in, if we're in a dark room and everything we want is right there, but it's totally dark, we can't see where the thing is that we're looking for. So we have to have enough light to be able to illuminate the space so that we can see what it is that we want to create. But when we don't have that light shining, or it's been snuffed out by this world, like, we can't, and we lose our will to live. And at some point, you know, you reached that point and it was like, wait a minute, you saw that your light mattered because you had a little light that you were responsible for. And that if that light got snuffed out, she wasn't going to be able to live her light. So as soon as you realized, like, whoa, wait a minute, hang on, let me get some light here. Then you can light up her life too. So like one light can light a million others. So just like that, you light up all of our lives, Keith and Shannon and Brenda, and all of the ones that we are your family, that we interact on a regular basis. Bob and Shannon from last week, you know, we're all part of the same dream weaving movement. And we're all here to share light and lift each other up. And you're such a beautiful leader in that. And I think your life, if you hadn't had those experiences and learned how to lead yourself out of the darkness, you wouldn't be such a great leader. So
Well, and that's what happened is I had to have these situations, people come into my life, or that helped me dig myself out of that hole. You know, like I said, I was in that bedrock, and then that's what led us, as there were 3 co-founders for a nonprofit called Love Must Win. And that's what led us to that. We all thought, we sat there, we were said, what would have helped us when we were at our darkest time, when we were teenagers and we needed, you know, or kids or adults, and what we needed. And some of us struggled with, I mean, between the 3 of us, the 3 co-founders, we had every imaginable thing ever happen to us. And we just thought, what would we have needed to pull us back to love, pull us back to light, to help our lights, you know, expand. And so we formed this organization called Love Must Win. It's been a nonprofit for around 7 years now. And, we do all kinds of different programming, from addiction-based programming to faith-based programming. So we do a lot of our interfaith or multi-faith events here in Cincinnati. We had an HIV program we helped launch, but now they separated off and became their own nonprofit, which is like amazing. We have youth groups for kids. I mean, it just like runs this gamut of like so many things and activities. We lead one of the region's Pride festivals and parade. It's a sober event as well, which is one of the only sober prides in the region. And we do all kinds of things in the community, but a lot of them are geared towards the LGBTQ plus community or other communities that have been underserved or underrepresented. And we do that on purpose because we realize that, especially in this LGBTQ plus community, that's what happens to them, right? It's like their light gets snuffed and then addictions come in faster. Drugs and alcohol, the darkness, you can sense that. And so all of these things then tend to affect the community more. If you look at, it's sad, but when you look at suicide rates, drug and alcohol rates, abuse rates, sexual abuse rates, sex trafficking rate, everything that's like rough in the world that we have to navigate, so much higher in the LGBTQ community. Suicide for a transgender person is 7 times more likely. And it's like, I don't like to focus on these things, but that's why we do what we do as a nonprofit and as an organization. And, I found myself there, and so many others that I know in the LGBT community and not have found themselves in that place of like, even as a young child thinking like, I don't belong here and I don't want to be on this planet. And then having to learning my true self, right? Like learning that God loves me, that the universe loves me, that Gaia loves me, that oneness loves me, that the creator loves me, that spirit loves me, that I'm loved, that I'm innately loved. Like I didn't have to do anything to be loved. That I was given that gift when I was born. We were all given that gift. It was just who we are, because we were made to be loved, and we were made to love, and we are love. And so that's the message of Love Must Win, is like, we really are just here to be the light or the love in the darkness when people have a hard time reaching for that. And so I always call Love Must Win a rainbow maker, which is funny because people will sometimes, which I see the rainbow in your background, Lisa, it's one of my favorite things. But it's not because of the LGBTQ aspect, right? Like some people would say, oh, you're just a rainbow maker because you work with the community and that's like the symbol for the community. But more so than that, why we kind of have that as our mascot, the rainbow, is because we realize without people's darkness, what they bring to the table, the clouds, the rain, we wouldn't be able to help create a rainbow. We help shine the light and the love onto their clouds and darkness, which then create a rainbow, right? Like, so, and our goal is to not be in existence, right? Like our goal is to not be an organization eventually, because we want people to get to this place of love and light. And when humanity keeps raising in consciousness and keeps raising in vibration and keeps raising, to these other, 4, 5, 6, 7D, levels, we won't need organizations like that, or the organization can exist purely as like just something else. But for now, it's like, it's much needed because people need the light. They need someone to do what my drug dealer did for me, right? And that's the thing, is like, we don't know who this light's going to be fostered by, or who's going to help reignite our heart or our love for ourselves or our love for the world. And a lot of times it's like unexpected people. It could be, a homeless person on the side of the road. I have a beautiful story in my book about Harper and an umbrella, which we can share it maybe later if you want, or I can share now. But long story short, it's just, that anybody can light up your life. Anybody can be that. And you can light up your own life. You can do all of those things. We all have the power and the ability and the know-how. Because like I said, it's innate. There's nothing we have to do to be loved. We are loved. We are love. Nothing we have to do to be that. But it's sometimes taking off those cloaks, taking off that shroud, the veil, because that's what gets us as humanity, as our programming. We're taught those things. So it's like unlearning all of that junk.
Exactly. It's like clearing out all of the interference, all of these layers of false ideas that have been perpetrated on us. And you're talking about before in the School of Metaphysics, learning about concentration. And it's really, like we naturally have focus and concentration. But with all of the other distractions from the external world, do this, don't do that, you should be this, you shouldn't be this, it's like our concentration gets so, fuzzy that we can't remember how to just simply focus. And, this is also part of kind of the dark agenda, if you want to call it that. We are creator beings, and we create with our focus. And without the ability to focus, it's super hard to create. So, that ability, like what we focus on and what we give our attention to, what we pay our attention to, is the thing that we are investing in. So it's really sad when we look at what so many people are investing in right now. All of the stories that are causing so much pain, so much hurt, so much devastation. If we can only realize that it's now we who are creating that for ourselves. Like, we don't have to continue down, digging ourselves into the bedrock anymore. It's like time for the yo-yo to come back up. It's like we've hit the bottom now. Okay, everybody, we can just pull ourselves back up now. It's like, and it is literally flipping that around, that awareness around, like, wait a minute, there's something far, far better that's available. And this is why I have the rainbow. It's like at the end of the storm, the rainbow comes out. And Dorothy, when she went over the rainbow and was like, we need to find the heart, we need to find the courage, we need to find the way home. It's like, my dear, you've had the power all along. It's like, that's kind of why I have that rainbow.
I love that. And I think, it's just, it's funny because we all have stories, right? Like, we all have. One of my favorite local artists here in this area, which I think Keith knows her name's Kim Ballou, and she has a song called Lay Your Story Down. And and I'm not going to sing it because I'm finding joy in singing, but I don't want you to have to endure my joy. But it's like, lay the story down, and like it's talking about putting the stories down that we carry in our life that hold us back. Yeah. And so that's what you reminded me of, is just that this world's taught us to have these stories and programmed us that way. And it's been very intentional, but we can that would be a whole other series once again, but it's been very intentionally programmed into us. And so our job, one of our main jobs right now, is just to find back love, right? It's reconnect with love, reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with Gaia, the planet, save our planet, love our planet, help raise the vibration. But one of the other pieces, one of the ways we get to that, I think, is by laying these stories down, by laying them down and acknowledging them, being thankful for them, grateful for them, that they happened, that they allowed us to have a part, have this beautiful part of our journey, right? Because I think, side notes, like when someone picks up my book, the first half of the book is really heavy. It talks about my childhood, it talks about all these things, all of these experiences, maybe suicide attempts, all of these hard things, and someone would say, oh, well, you're living in the past, or you're living in that story. And it's like, no, like me and many people in the story, including like my mom, who's a big part of my story, we decided to lay that story down long ago when we did healing. But it took a lot of time and effort and energy. And I don't think it always has to take a lot of time, effort, and energy. But in some cases it does. When there's healing involved and other people involved, sometimes it takes that work, right? Sometimes it takes that work on ourselves or in the relationships. And so by laying your story down, though, and really acknowledging that has a pull on you, you're laying it down so it doesn't have that pull on you anymore. It's almost like it didn't happen to you. My mom always says this. She's like, I read part of your books and it's almost like it didn't exist. Like, it doesn't, I don't even feel it in my emotional field or my energy, because it's like it's been such a lifetime ago for me. And I said, and that's, what I've been working on through the book process brought all this stuff up, right? Like, whoa, like brought everything to the surface. The things that I thought I'd already cleared and really worked through, the stories I thought I had laid down. And that's one of the things that the process brought up for me. So I just think it's powerful to work through that process, laying the stories down and being grateful for them and saying like, thank you, and offering gratitude. I think that's one of the best, easiest ways to like let go of those stories that hold us back, is to be grateful for them and say, thank you, universe, thank you, God, thank you, whoever, what situations where people hurt you. It's like, thank you for that experience. And now I can lay that down and walk away and have the learning and growth from it and not be attached, let go of the attachment, let go of the suffering. There's a lot of growth that can happen through suffering. I believe that wholeheartedly, but that's not the only way to grow. And then once you get to that growth point, you can decide to let go of the suffering. You've already got to the growth point. You've already learned what you needed to learn from that. So let it go, lay it down, and be grateful and acknowledge it, but don't hold on to it. So anyway, it ties in kind of, like I said, with my friend's song that I really like. It just popped in my heart. I don't know. So, and then it just ties into like so many aspects of all of our stories, right? Like that we hold on to things, or we can hold on to things. And sometimes we think that's all the way God. We're like, oh, we let go of that eons ago. But then, we realized that maybe we didn't, or that there's other layers to it. Not that I love the onion approach always, because I think sometimes you can just obliterate the onion all at once and goes away. But sometimes, things are being really hard things in life, times that you were really hurt or felt abandoned, or those core wounds that you carry. Sometimes it is more, piece by piece you heal that. So, and part of that's laying down stories, part of that's connecting with your spark again, part of that's all of these things, right? Helping raise the vibration of the planet, because as you help heal the planet, you're helping heal yourself. And as you heal yourself, you're helping heal the planet. So you can work on it either way. And some people always, have a lot of friends and gurus in my life that would say, you only have to focus on healing yourself, and then that heals the planet automatically. But I think it can work both ways, and I see it working both ways. So I don't think there's just one way to the world, right? One way to live. But I do like that. I feel like either way, as you lift your vibration, it raises the vibration, and or as you help raise the vibration in the world, you're raising your own vibration. Probably by proximity, by being close to you doing that work, but also just it raises everyone's vibration. So there's a million ways to reach that, a billion ways, a trillion ways. But I think one of those most kind of prominent ways is like letting go of those stories, acknowledging, being grateful, being in the muck, right? Like being on the Oregon Trail and getting your wheels stuck in the mud and still finding something to be grateful for, right? Maybe it leads you to a trade, someone stops and ends up trading you something you needed that you didn't have, and you get your wheel fixed eventually and you get on your way. But you don't know why that happened, but just being grateful for it, allowing, even in the moment when you're like in the thick of things, right, in the mud, to stop and be grateful for it. I did that yesterday. I was having one of those days where I felt a little disconnected. And at one point just stopped and said, oh gosh, I have so much to be grateful for. And it just helped shift my mind, and bring me back to a place of oneness, back to a place of love. So it's a beautiful life we live. It's very, it's very ebb and flow at times. And I've been working on having more flows and less ebbs, but, and it happens. It does happen. The ebbs are much smaller. But there's still ebb and flows, the ebbs are still there. The valleys are still there at times. So, but it's like finding gratitude, and even in the valley, right? It's like finding, and then not having to latch onto it. Like, it doesn't have to be my story for a whole week or a month or a year, just because it's my story for today or yesterday. I can let go of that. So I think that lesson ties into so many things in life, of laying that story down. It's like really is powerful for me.
For sure. It's like we can keep the story, but like let go of all of the charges around it. So just like your mom, like she can now read all of those stories, but there's no more charge to them. So like there's no more electric fence, it's like you're not getting zapped by it. And that's when that you've laid your story down, is that there is no more charge to it. Yeah. And all of these stories that we overcome, they turn out to be our greatest triumphs. That darkest moment where you were on your knees, like, and going through that whole addiction period, which you were really just trying to soothe yourself. The addictions were serving a purpose. It's not that they were bad. That was how you were trying to soothe and just get through life. So they were really serving that purpose. But once they weren't serving the purpose anymore, and you realize, like, whoa, hang on, let's get a new purpose. Then you have this beautiful, amazing story to be able to share. And look how far in the opposite direction you are now. How empowered you are and how bright a light you are. I mean, just sitting, you can just see the light shining from you. So it's so beautiful.
Part of laying down that story, thank you for one, and part of laying down that story is also, it kind of goes into the 4 agreements, right? If no one's familiar with the 4 agreements, it's, always doing your best, being impeccable with your word, never making assumptions, and what's the 4th one? What's the 4th one? Not taking anything personally, which is funny because that's the last 2 are the 2 I wanted to talk about. It's because even when you lay your story down, you can lay down it's not having attachment to your story, good, bad, and different. So even now when people speak, the last 10 years, I've done so much work on myself and in the world and all of those things, and so much more to come. But it's like not having attachment to that, because I think sometimes when we have even that story in our head, right? Like the story that, like, oh, I'm doing so much good for the world, or I transformed my life, which they're good. They happened. All of those things are true. But when you attach to that story, a lot of times people get complacent then as well, because they're like, I already done all this work. I don't need to do anything. I can do this. And it leaves, it's not, I'd rather hold on to that story, that, this current story, this last 10 years, than holding on to the stories of the past. But regardless, laying all of those stories down, actually, not allowing myself to take things personally, good, bad, and different things that people say or do. And that's hard for some people when they really look into the 4 agreements. It says in there, this is like a Toltec wisdom, is that you're not supposed to take things personally, even the good things. So if someone comes to you and says a compliment, it's like you acknowledge it and say, oh gosh, thank you, and mean it from your heart. And if you do mean it from your heart, say it and mean it. But you don't latch onto it as one of your stories, right? Because people have done that too the last, 8-10 years, especially since in the nonprofit world, people would put me on a pedestal, certain friends or acquaintances. And that was very unhealthy story that they were creating for me. That was their story for me. But knowing that not to take things personally and not to make assumptions and to always do my best and to, be impeccable with my word, I've really had to navigate some of those situations where people, it was on the positive side, right? Like it's not a negative story, it's a positive story, but it wasn't beneficial to me in my life to be seen that way, in a way that I grasp onto it as my way to find, as a way to find my love and acceptance for myself. Because that's someone giving me love and acceptance, saying, oh, this is the story I have for you. You embody love and acceptance. That's great. That means I'm probably doing my job right, on this earth to do what I'm doing. But if I latch on and say, just because Lisa said that, it is the truth, and it goes back to the 4 agreements, and it's a really tricky one because you're like, it's a positive thing. Why wouldn't you want to own that as like who you are? But that's part of the 4 agreements, is it's saying you find that yourself, whatever you feel, and in letting those stories down, letting go of those attachments to the good, bad, and different things people say or do to you, because those aren't about you, those are about them. Or sometimes it's a reflection. And so, you might see beauty in me, but it's really your beauty, or vice versa. But whatever, it's just interesting because that's what I've struggled with that for many years. And the last couple of years, I've been able to really actively look at that 4 agreement in that way and say, yes, I'm not going to take that personally. Even if it's good, it's not like I'm not taking the compliment and really being grateful and feel like that's a valuable thing that you said. But it's also about not letting that be the reason or you're, I mean, I could go off on this call and go yell at my child and then say, well, Lisa said I'm love and light in the world, so I don't have to do anything else. My job's done. That's a bad example, but it's, I think it's just an interesting concept to talk about and to bring to light, because I think people are really quick to, we need positivity. We need people to help uplift us. But in the end of the day, we still have to be the one that give us that love and acceptance. It's like a self-love, a self-acceptance that can't come from anybody else. Because if it does, then it's shrouded in a different story. It's shrouded in their story of you. And so it's not your own story of you. So you're not able, and then learning how to let go of those stories and just, whatever. But I just think that's fun to think about, because it's like, well, it's positive. I want to latch onto it. I want to hold it as one of my stories, but is that really benefiting your growth and learning? Is it really benefiting? It might help you to see yourself in your real true reflection. But if you latch onto it as the truth, then it does something to us. And the Four Agreements goes into it more and speaks to it more. But I just love that, because I think it really allows us to not be attached to the story, to our story or other people's stories. And so I love the Four Agreements. If you've not read, I'm sure that most people that are maybe listening probably read or at least know of the concepts of the Four Agreements, but that's really vital in my life. And sometimes I just have to get back to the basics, right? That's what my message this morning was: get back to the basics. I was doing some mirror reflections and some affirmations, and just, and doing some praying to my archangels and all kinds of things. And I was like, gosh, these are such basics, but they're so vital for what I do, for keeping my vibration at where I want it to be or need it to be, or where God needs it to be, or whatever. It's like, there's all these tools in the tool belt, right? And I think one of those tools I often forget is laying the story down. It's like, I do it unconsciously, but consciously laying the story down, not having attachment, not making assumptions, not being impeccable with my word, doing my best, all of those Four Agreements. So I just think it's interesting when you really are like in the Four Agreements, like what it does to you and kind of pulls out in you.
Yeah. I look at that also as, being neutral, being in neutrality, not allowing ourselves to get charged in any of those ways. Like judgment is one of the really heavy charges on things, good and bad and right and wrong. Those are judgments. They're not particular. If you can be the neutral observer, then you can allow all of those beautiful things to come and appreciate all the compliments and everything, but you're not attached to them. Like there's no charge to them, and there's not a judgment, which then turns it personal. It's like, oh, well, no, it's just like, oh, thank you. And it just feels good, because it's in alignment. It's who we are. The Four Agreements are really kind of designed to, as a guidance, to keep us in alignment with our soul and who we are. And, when we can be in that state of neutrality and be the observer and, not get charged by things, then, we can really go through life in great balance.
Mm-hmm. And still do the work we're supposed to do in the world, and do the work on ourselves, because it would get too caught up. I've just seen that story play out for many people around me in different ways, but that story of latching on to the good or bad, either one, it still creates a story, and still you're not able to be the observer. You're not able to, the observer is such a valuable a way of being, and it just brings a lot of balance. And that's what it's funny, because I didn't have a word for it until just now when you said observer. It's like, oh gosh, that's what I've been doing the last couple of years. And since I shifted into that observer role more the last couple of years. And so it's been interesting looking at things in life that I used to would react or respond to in a different way, or would have charged me, even positively, to look at it now, and it doesn't charge me as the same. And so I thought, wow, is something wrong with me or different than me? But I've been analyzing certain things like that for a while. And I didn't beat myself up over it. I just be like, oh, that didn't affect me the same way it used to affect me a couple years ago. But it's exactly what you just said. It's allowing myself to be the observer, to say, oh, that's being grateful for it, acknowledging it, reciprocating that, whatever it was, positive back. If I feel called to, I don't always just do it to do it. I do it because I'm called to do it. But yeah, that's really valuable for me. That observer piece of like, it doesn't have to be, yeah, it was something that I was struggling with, to be honest, because I was like, I don't respond the same way when people say or do the same things they did years ago, right? It really like charged me up if someone would say, oh, Ryan, I see this light in you. And it would charge me up. I would latch onto it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And, especially, my first couple years in sobriety, my first couple years on my journey, I remember one lady, her name's Charmy, and she just came to me after a group meditation and said, you are just one of the most beautiful lights I've ever seen in my life. And she was this beautiful healer and sound bowl healer, and had beautiful visions and would channel, like all these beautiful, just amazing soul. And so to me, right, I like really looked up to her as like this guru and so it was just when she said that, I like latched onto it, and I latched onto it for years. But it might have been what I needed in that moment. But now, since I've learned to shift into that neutral observer, I don't have to latch onto that and make that. But it was helpful at that time. And so I think for different people on different journeys, you might not, the ways you follow the 4 agreements, the ways that you lay stories down might be different. You might have to lay that story down after a year or 2, or after 6 months, or after a month, or after a week or a day or whatever. You might not be able to lay it down immediately. And I think that's part of this, a beautiful thing about our journeys, is that, at different times in all of our lives, we've all probably been on all sides of that. And I think it's really beautiful. Yeah. So I just wanted to say, I appreciate you saying that, Lisa, because it was the observer. Like, I just never had put that into understanding for myself. And it was like this big shift I just had. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, really
Sweet.
appreciate that.
I love being able to do that. Keith says, we were born for a time like this. We are the light we're searching for. Let's shine and lift those around us up. Amen, brother. Let God's
Keith.
spirit universe shine through us and as us. Yes. And Jackie Catherine says, yes, everyone's story matters, for certain. Kim says, Kim Baloo is a beautiful expression of spirit, inspiring music and powerful story. He says, I have so much more to be grateful for than to be sorry for. And Jackie says, our pain is divested of its power over us. Yeah, there you go. Mother Teresa said that no one should have the power to bring you up or to bring you down or elevate you. Something to that effect. True, exactly. We can't have anybody else managing our state of being. Each and every one of us is a grand and glorious being of light. And we're responsible for our own states of being. And unfortunately, in this world, we have all been taught backwards. And we have all been told, be like this, do this, go do this thing, don't do that thing. And our state of being has been managed for us for a really long time. And if you just look at the news, that is designed to manage our state of being. It is designed to manage us right into destruction. And we are responsible for our own state of being. Just because the entire world is going in one direction does not mean that that's the direction that we need to go, especially when that direction is in the direction of death and destruction and mayhem and fear.
Chaos.
Exactly. It's like, it's our job to stay still and be the light and connect inside to the love and the light that we are. And this is where all healing is. This is where all happiness is. This is where our uniqueness is. We are born to be unique. We are created as unique souls. There is not a single thing wrong with any of us at the soul level. But when we come into these physical bodies, we are no longer looked at as the soul. We're looked at as the body. But we're not the body. We are the soul in the body. So it's up to us to allow our soul to shine so that other people can see our soul. When they're only looking at the body, they see what the body looks like. But this is not who we are. It's not what we are, and it's not even how we have to present ourselves. I see Ryan's soul. I see the light shining forth. I read his energy. This is the soul. The soul is our energy, and it's our beingness. So it's up to each and every one of us to manage our own state of being. And the external world manages our state of being right down into the gutter. And we have all been at the bottom of the barrel. And we do not need to live at the bottom of the barrel. And it is time for us to raise the bottom of the barrel up, get rid of the barrel altogether, and start living as the brilliant, bright lights that we are. This is the essence of healing. Healing doesn't come from a pill, and it's not even about the body. It is about reconnecting to our own light, like Ryan has so beautifully done. And it's the love that we are. So I love this story that you're sharing with the world, and this amazing organization that you have created to help people get rid of the barrel and start shining their light.
Yeah, it's there's so many different avenues people can take to get to that place too, right? For the 8 billion people there are on the planet, there's 8 billion ways to, and within those 8 billion people, there's a billion ways. So there's just tons of ways to really get from
infinite
to that place of obliterating the barrel, right? Obliterating the onion, obliterating the story, laying it down, all of the things that helping raise your own vibration, the world's vibration. And one of my favorite things is just by, like you said, concentrating, meditating, mindfulness practices. And just really diving into what feels good for you, like tapping in and asking for divine guidance too, like what feels good. Like I did that the other week. I said, I had the opportunity to maybe go to Miami, Florida and go to the beach for a few days, or to go hiking and kind of secluded solo trip hiking. And, Miami sounds really fun. Miami Beach, on the beach, warm. And I was just guided. My intuition, God said, you need to be in nature and you need to be alone. So I was there for 2 days. I saw 7 hikers, never more than just passing for a minute. So I was very alone for 2 days, and it was beautiful, and it was exactly what my soul needed. I was able to be in this beautiful place.
Ryan's cutting out for a few.
Oh, let's see.
Popping right back on, but
did that work?
Exactly. Oh, there's Ryan back.
Sorry about that. You froze, so I thought it was you. I was like, oh, Lisa, she's not moving at all.
That's funny. On our side, it was just you. Well, let's see. So we have Jackie saying that. We have Kinsey. Hey, Kinsey. And Keith says, guess what, Ryan? I love you.
Oh, I love you, Keith.
Keith is also the embodiment of love beyond. We all love Keith. And I know Keith loves all of us too. And we love having him as our regular guest on this show. And next week, he'll be here with his love, hopefully. Have to check with him. And Kinsey, oh yeah. And there was a whole time. Cool. Awesome. So I love all of these stories that we've been sharing, each and every one of us, we all have our own story of the darkness of that despair, of those times where we just didn't know we could go on or didn't want to go on, or whatever those stories were. And oh yay, woohoo, Keith will be here next week. And it's the tuning back in, it's the listening inside, our inner wisdom, our inner guidance. Just like you had the choice, do I go to Miami or do I go out into nature? And your inner guidance, when you follow the fine frequencies, when we start to notice the finer energies, when we can start listening to the subtle frequencies and the subtle energies, that's the soul speaking through. And it's the guidance that we need. And when we get quiet and we stop listening to all of the inner world, that comes through life. And this is the whole essence of bringing ourselves back home to ourselves, to creating heaven on earth. It's bringing heaven back to earth through our bodies, like Ryan did. And just listen to that, where simply God love. Have Ryan here with us today. His internet has been connecting in and out a little bit here. I think you're back now.
Am I back now? Sorry.
You are back now.
Yeah, sorry. I switched to
We're back.
Am I there or am I cutting out again?
So hopefully we'll see if he hops back in for a final farewell here. So, internet works great when it works great.
Am I back?
You are back. Hopefully it's you and not me. I don't know. I keep going, but I see that there's like on the feed, it's going in and out. So I'm not sure which one of us is actually feeding.
Oh, well, it's been such a pleasure, Lisa. There's so many things. One last thing I wanted to say is that it's really important that we do share our stories, though. And the piece of, so laying your story down doesn't mean that you don't share your story. You share your story because it helps, you might do the final pieces of healing, but it also helps other people to connect, to learn and grow. But it's about laying down the attachment to those stories and around letting go of the energies, right? Letting go of the charge, as you called it, which I love that. And I think we froze again. So
I think it's me. I don't know. You're good on my side.
Oh, okay. But just letting go of those charges to the stories. And so allowing us to share our story because it's powerful. Everyone has a beautiful story to share and oftentimes many stories to share that are really beneficial to yourself and the world to share. So please share. That's one of the reasons I shared my story. I was guided and said, by you sharing your story, it allows other people to share their story and know that they have an important story to share and to bring to the world. But letting go of the charge of the story, that's the medicine right there. So thank you, Lisa, for that and for the beautiful time together today. And it's been so beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And if people want to read your book or reach out to you, how do they do that? Where do they find you in your book?
So you can go to ryanjosephalen.com, ALLEN, or mydrugdealerbroughtmetogod.com, or you can find My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God on Amazon, ebook, audiobook, hardcover, paperback. You can find it at Walmart, I think right now. Target carries it sometimes, Walmart. I don't know, all those places, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all of that stuff. So wherever.
I think it's me freezing. All right. Beautiful. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on Connecting You to You, listening on Connecting You to You radio, new thing, my podcast, in the show notes, because and to his book. All so much. Thank you, Ryan. Hopefully our connection will stabilize here in just a minute. All right, looks like this one. We'll see which. Hang on. Are we back now?
I think I can
I
see
see
you
you
and hear
again.
you. Oh, it's too much energy for it. It's like,
It is.
it's
It truly is. I love it. So, all right. So let's see if we'll just sign off for today. Thank you all so much. There we go. Now we're back, I think. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And yes, we've just brought so much high vibrational energy. The signal was having trouble keeping up with us.
oh, thank you so much, Lisa. And it's been such a beautiful morning with you.
Solution. Thank you.